Good evening and welcome to the November 15th, 2022 Gilderland Central School Board Board of Education meeting. Would you all please silence your cell phones and stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, first on the agenda tonight, we have several public comments. Some are in person and some are written in. So we'll start in person. Just a reminder that we keep public comment to 3 minutes, and you can just go right up to the mic. We'll start with Rachel Riley.
Good evening. I've been asked to read the following from a member of our community. My name is Inam Murad. I was born in a Muslim family in a war-torn country, Afghanistan. My father and entire family members have worked in the country's Ministry of Education, and after my graduation, I started to work in the same as analyst in budget department. In 2001, when the United States ousted Taliban from power and a new democratic government was formed, I resigned my job from Ministry of Education and started to work for the U.S. Army as a culture advisor, interpreter, and translator. Based on my work, my mom, dad, brothers, sisters, and all relatives turned against me and my family. After 2005, I and my family was not safe anymore. Our enemies tried to kidnap my children on the way from school. My house was set on fire while I was on duty away from home, and the enemy tried to break into my house several times. I had to change my house location time to time, but they would find us again and continue to threaten us. I never lost courage and continued my job shoulder by shoulder with our armed forces, but a time came where there I could not stay in Afghanistan even for another day, and we decided to escape to India. We left our homeland in 2012. Upon the arrival in India, we became Christians, and we were all involved in ministering to other Afghan people who would visit India for medical treatment, tourism, or business. Based on that, again, we were mocked, humiliated, stoned, and my house was attacked by some anti-Christian people in India. After long suffering in India, we, the family, was granted special immigrant visas, and we came to the United States in 2014. Here in the United States, we are still adjusting to new life. We still have not enjoyed our freedom because it is much more challenging for a big family to start from scratch in every aspect of life, let alone in security. My son, Issa Syed, was assaulted in Gilderland High School for no reason, followed by another attack, followed by intimidating text messages and death threats. Yes, we are all exactly threatened and attacked here in the United States as we were once in Afghanistan. My family is scared of what if they attack our house. My son cannot go out, as well as my daughters, and I am also mentally alerted and started to use my tactics of survival, which I should not because we live in USA now. I am in a condition now where I think where to go from here, where to hide, and where to run. The Gilderland High School is now trying to somehow remove my son from school because they are unable to control the situation. Instead of fixing and controlling, they are trying to escape from the problem, which I believe is not prudent. My question is that how many students will you send home to ease yourself? What about the safety of all other students? Why are we not able to work together to find and eliminate the existing issues? How many other students will you have to send home, but not even try to understand and resolve the issues fundamentally? We need to work together to ensure the safety of our children and their families for the future, because what I see now is totally unimaginable. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Riley. Next, we have Rachel Dwyer.
As many are aware, the current state of our high school is not satisfactory. I have never heard of a time where teachers fear their students, the people they are supposed to help grow. As a junior here in Gilderland, I have witnessed this fear teachers have transferring right to their students. The actions of many have become safety hazards and at many times illegal, but people are too afraid to say anything out of fear. I should not have to watch my back when I need to use the bathroom. However, with our current state, I have to be fearful. The high school being filled with illegal actions and safety hazards is distracting and harmful to mine and my peers' education. Last week, I walked into the bathroom to a group of girls sitting in a circle, vaping, with absolutely no fear of getting caught, and they had the the nerve to judge me. Sadly, this has become normalized. No fear of getting caught and no fear of discipline. By the end of the day, I am mentally lethargic, and not because of my workload, but because of the lack of structure and discipline the school has enforced. The lack of fear for some has transitioned to an increase in fear of many. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dwyer. Next, we have Madalena Riley.
Good evening. I would like to take this opportunity to thank the board for allowing me to speak about an important topic. I'm here today to speak about the need for another school resource officer. Fights are breaking out very frequently in Guilderland High School, and it's very worrying. It's uncomfortable to walk in the halls, worried if I'm going to see another fight take place. It becomes a serious problem when students' education is stunted because of violence going on in these very halls. Guilderland High School has become an unsafe learning environment. Watching a beatdown take place during lunch and kids start pointing cameras and laughing is a horrible experience I cannot begin to describe. I implore the Board of Ed to approve another resource officer. While I'm fully aware that another resource officer is not the be-all and end-all of a solution, I believe it is an incredible vital step in the right direction to making our halls and school more safe for students who are just trying to get an education. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Riley. Next, we have Kaylee Green.
Hello, my name is Kaylee Green, and I'm a junior here at GHS, and I'm here to speak to you on a few different topics this evening. As a high school student, I see the violence here every day, and having a brother in the middle school, I hear of what's happening there as well. The only clear answer to violence is assertive power and actual consequences. So, like many other here tonight, I find a need for more resource officers in our schools. Hundreds of parents put their children in your hands every day, but as the days go by, especially for high school, their trust in you slips further and further down the drain. Typically, school districts have one resource officer per 1,000 students in the district. We have one for 7 campuses. At this time, more resource officers are essential to ensuring that all of our schools can be safe. You're most likely aware that yesterday an accidental lockdown was called at GHS. I would like to address the fact that the way GHS reacted was appalling. First, the classroom I was in was never opened by a police officer or an administrator. Why? I'm not sure. Second, it was called during Block 3, the block where the high school has lunch. Hundreds of students were in the lunchrooms and followed no protocol or procedure. They just sat there, having no clue what to do. Why isn't there protocol for this? And if there is, why wasn't it executed? Third, over the loudspeaker, it was announced that the lockdown had been an accident and that we were in a shelter in place. Some teachers had their students get up and go back to their desks and keep learning. I know that that's not the protocol for if the building's in a lockdown, but why have the administration not kept the teachers up to date and making sure the teachers know what to do? My last point is that plenty of students were in the halls or the bathroom at that exact moment, and they had not a clue what was going on. Some of them may have heard faint beeps from closed classrooms, but there are no speakers in the bathrooms or halls, and they didn't have a clear view of the clock, so they had no clue what was going on. The fact that students didn't know what was going on when they heard these beeps shows an error on the end of administration, because at the beginning of the school year, we weren't briefed on what each of the different beeping sounds mean. I think that the worst part was that other than one email, the district hasn't addressed this at all. They haven't shown a clear path forward and keeping our buildings safe in the future. Lastly, on the topic of violence in the high school, every student and staff member at GHS has noticed a spike in the numbers of fights and the increased intentions in our high school. I came to this school board in this room 6 months ago expressing the dangers of our high school starting so early. A lack of sleep caused by high school starting before 8:30 has a direct correlation to a drastic increase in violence in schools. My dad will be speaking directly on this from a research paper in a little bit. I'm aware that there's nothing we can do at this time about it, but I would like you to all take a long, hard look at the results of that ultimate decision that was made last spring. In conclusion, to address violence, I once again ask you for additional resource officers needed to keep our buildings safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Thomas Green.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Thomas Green. I am a taxpayer and property owner in the town of Guilderland. I have 2 children in the Guilderland School District. Kaylee, who is in 11th, and my son Joshua, who is in 7th grade. Tonight, I'll be sharing with you a few excerpts from the Aggressive Behavior, Volume 48, Issue 3, the research article entitled Physiological Distress Mediates the Connection Between Sleep Deprivation and Physical Fighting in Adolescence. Sleep is a biological process that is essential to life, playing a critical role in brain function and systemic physiology. Healthy sleep in adolescence has a duration of between 8 and 10 hours per night, without long periods awake, and a lack of sleep threatens many aspects of development, including school commitment, general health, and physical safety. Aggressive behavior is known as a possible outcome of sleep deprivation. It is a complex behavior related to many different dimensions, including affective, cognitive, and behavioral expressions in response to stimuli from the external environment. The pathway from sleep to violent behavior is complex, and the role of mediating factors has not yet been empirically clarified. 3 paths of influence have been proposed: the affective pathway, the cognitive pathway, and the response control pathway. According to the affective pathway, lack of sleep increases negative effects. This pathway suggests that emotional and moody states may be the key to explaining how lack of sleep may influence aggressive behavior. Studies have shown that poor sleep causes negative emotions with compromised moods. Lack of sleep frequently increases negative emotional states, including fatigue, anxiety, depression, and irritation. Disturbed sleep also increases discomfort and pain, including sensitivity to them, which may motivate aggression. Lack of sleep could also be related to hostility and aggression because it induces more negative interpretations of other people's behavior than is really the case. This illustrates the second, cognitive pathway. There is also a third pathway, the response control pathway, which implies that impulse inhibition is weakened by lack of sleep, which in turn impacts cognitive response control processes and complex decision-making performance. We can't go back and change the past. We cannot correct our mistakes in this life. But what we can do is bring the resources that are necessary to get this problem under control. And the only way we can do that now is through discipline. And we must hire more school resource officers to accomplish this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Green. We have 3 public comments that were sent to us, and so I'll read them in the order that they were sent. The first one says, Dear Guilderland Board of Education members, hello, my name is Katie Len. My husband and I, along with our 3 children, moved to Guilderland from Albany just over 4 years ago. Our oldest child, 15, is a sophomore at GHS. Our middle child, 11, is a 6th grader at FMS, while our youngest child, 8, is a 3rd grader at Pine Bush. This past summer, I attended all 3 in-person open houses. As I walked the halls of the high school during open house, I was amazed about how massive and spread out the building is. My thoughts then shifted to a building of this size with this many students, teachers, coaches, custodial workers, administrators, etc., has only one school resource officer, one. Guilderland board members, we must do better. Surrounding school districts have multiple school resource officers, yet we only have one. One school resource officer to cover 7 schools. Let's all think about that for a minute. One school resource officer to 7 schools doesn't seem like a safe or reasonable ratio to me. I'm not going to go on and on about why we need more officers. I think we all know why. However, I will say it is extremely disappointing that our school district will not financially support another resource officer. I would be curious to know where funds are allocated that are deemed more important and necessary than the safety of our children and employees of our school district. I'm confident in saying that I'm one of many residents in this district who feel passionately about our school's safety. So to the members of the Guilderland Board of Education, myself and many others in our community are strongly asking for consideration for the approval of another school resource officer. To say this is a must is an understatement. I thank you for your time and consideration in this extremely serious matter. Katie Len. The next public comment reads, to the Guilderland Board of Education and Dr. Marie Wiles. I am emailing to provide a public comment for the upcoming board meeting on Tuesday, November 15th. I understand there's going to be a discussion regarding adding an extra SRO to the district. As a parent of 2 beautiful kids, I felt all of the feelings that other families in the district surely must be feeling, and I understand the desire to feel like we are doing something to protect our children while they are at school. There is not a single day that goes by that I don't wonder if it's the last time I'll see my children when putting them on the bus or dropping them off at school in the morning. I'd like to draw the board's attention to the National Education Association's post from April of this year by James Patterson titled, "Making Schools Safe and Just," and she provided a link there. In particular, I found this part of the NEA post to be relevant to Tuesday's discussion. Quote, "Over the last 2 decades, schools in the U.S. have increasingly employed SROs, often from local police department. Their numbers have grown dramatically, driven by school shootings and a sense that students are too unruly. In 1975, only 1% of U.S. schools reported having SROs, but that number rose to about 36% by 2004 and to 58% by 2018, including 72% of high schools. These increases are due in large part to more than $1 billion in federal funding for SROs. Yet research shows that SROs do little to reduce on-campus violence or mass shootings, and their presence is often damaging to students of color and students with disabilities. Having SROs in schools can actually create higher rates of behavioral incidents and spikes in suspensions, expulsions, and arrests. As a parent, I am concerned about the mental health and physical safety of all students in the district. I believe that many students would feel uncomfortable with an added law enforcement presence in the schools. While some students and families may feel safer with an extra SRO, other students and families may feel the opposite. I would also like to draw the board's attention to this New York Times article and this Texas House of Representatives report. I believe that the district has already implemented all of the appropriate safety measures that it can to protect our children. Adding an extra SRO will not add to the safety of the students in the schools, and it potentially could lead to situations where already marginalized students have to endure further negative experiences. Best, Sarah Kate Cantor. Third public comment. Hi, Board of Ed and Dr. Wiles. I am writing as a concerned member of the Gilroy community and want to express my concern regarding adding more school resource officers to Gilroy schools. My primary concern is that not all members of the community feel reassured at the sight of an SRO. There have been numerous studies over the past 40 years, some of which I have cited at the end of this letter, that demonstrate that SROs have not been proven to make schools safer. What these studies have demonstrated is that marginalized students experience higher levels of anxiety, stress, and feel less safe when SROs are present. Additionally, in schools with SROs, students of color are more likely to be expelled, suspended, or arrested. My second concern is the added cost of an SRO. The money spent on an SRO would be better served in adding another school counselor, teacher, teacher's aide, or a coach that would directly benefit students, reduce a class size, or offer additional resources for students. My last concerns are the bigger systemic issues that adding an SRO would not resolve. The most recent example was a poorly executed lockdown drill at the high school on Monday. This apparently caused stress to many students and staff. There were numerous reports of breaking protocol, namely by a vice principal. Other examples are the poorly planned theme days and reports of racism that the DEI committee has been dealing with since its inception. When making the decision on whether or not to add an SRO, please take into account all members of the community and not just the loudest voices that repeatedly ask for another SRO with no concrete justification for their ask. Sincerely, Tony Rivera. Linda, do we have other public comments that came in? No? All right, so I'd say most of these public comments have to do with the safety and SROs, which is first on the agenda after public comment. We have a program report about SROs, so I think it'd be appropriate to let the presentation happen, and then we can have a discussion. Do you have one more public comment? Can you come up to the mic so people at home can hear? And just say your name.
Hi, my name is Brooke Snyder. I am a junior attending Guilderland High School. I wanted to come tonight and express my concern for our school and student body as a whole. This year is very different from others for me in regards to my safety and failure to focus and do school with everything that has been going on recently. For students, school should be a place where kids feel safe and able to learn without any distractions. School should not be somewhere where you have to be worried about constantly going into shelter-in-places or lockdowns due to how out of hand a portion of the student body has come to. As a student at GHS, I cannot confidently say I feel safe to be in school. I've dealt with personal bullying and harassment. Each day I can't sit in lunch with my back to the door out of fear of another altercation. I'm scared to walk in the hallways alone because of the continuous fights among the students. I'm being forced to walk certain ways to classes because of the numerous hallways that are being blocked off due to protests inside the building being held during school time. There's barely a week that goes by without a fight or some sort of altercation at school. I come home from school almost every day with new stories to tell my parents about fights, protests, and numerous shelter-in-places. I never thought I would be at a point in my life where I'm walking into school being scared, wondering what's going to happen today, and praying it doesn't get worse than it already has. My learning and ability to focus in school is being affected by all of this going on, and I feel a lot of other students and members of the school community would agree. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Snyder. So we'll go on to the program report. Oh, what's that? Oh, can you just say your name at the mic? Thanks.
Hi, my name is Elizabeth Schaefer, and I'm a junior at Guilderland High School. I wanted to speak from a personal experience from last week that I had. I was walking into school late because of a doctor's appointment. I was unable to get in right away like normal because of a protest going on. I was yelled at and verbally harassed by people attending the protest that I am normally friendly with. I was disgusted by the chaos that I was witnessing and nothing being done about it. I am concerned about me and my peers' education because it is affecting what we have worked so hard for, learning so many years up to this point in our life, getting into college, and it's affecting our learning and ability to learn at the highest at the highest point we can. Thank you.
Are there any other public comments? Okay, so we'll go on to the presentation about school resource officers, and I think a lot of the questions that I think people have, and we can take from the community as well, can happen after the presentation. It seems to make most sense that way. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Wiles.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Rivera. Good evening, everyone. Tonight we have an overview of what our school resource program is all about. We also have a number of members from the Guilderland Police Department who are with us tonight, who will be helping me in the Q&A portion of the presentation tonight. And I also want to recognize our building principals and other administrators who are in the back of the room to also assist. So let me get started here. And I'm going to start with what the mission of the school resource program, school resource officer program is all about. And it's basically two major areas. And the first is to promote school safety by building a positive school climate where every last person feels safe and students are supported to succeed. A lot of what we've heard tonight already. And the other part of the mission for the resource officer is really to seek to reduce violent crime committed by and against the youth in our community. And how do they do this? Well, lots of different ways, beginning by supporting a safe, secure, and orderly learning environment for students, teachers, and staff. Importantly, by establishing a trusting channel of communication with students and parents and teachers, by serving as a positive role model to help instill in our students good moral standards, good judgment, discretion, respect for other students, and a sincere concern for the quality of our school community. And they also can provide information and resources to our community members through our students and our parents. And as I listened to the impassioned comments from everyone today and kind of the tone that I've heard so much in last days, these words resonate. I want to take a step back and provide a little bit of a history of our SRO program here in Guilderland. It actually goes back to August of 1999. That is when the Board of Education at the time approved a recommendation to establish an on-site SRO. And then in January 2006, as we were kind of digging through our archives, we learned that the superintendent at the time actually did some additional research into school resource programs. But no additional change happened after that immediately until January in 2009. And it was at that point that the board approved the recommendation to hire a second SRO. So during that time, we had an SRO assigned to Guilderland High School and also to Farnsworth Middle School. And then in April of 2012, this was really the height or perhaps the depth of tremendous financial difficulties for Guilderland, but really across the state and nation. We ended up decreasing our SRO program back down to one SRO who was housed at that time at Guilderland High School. And this is the model that we still have today. A couple more history points. So last March 2022, our school board approved the Memorandum of Understanding with the Guilderland Police Department, which really frames what our current program looks like and really is the foundation of the points I'm making today. Many of these ideas come right from that Memorandum of Understanding. And then shortly thereafter, the town of Guilderland also approved the MOU. So following that, we have a school district safety and security committee that I want to just take a detour and talk about just a little bit. We've had this committee for a number of years now, and I know there's some interest, who's on this committee, what kind of work do they do? And so I just want to take a minute to talk about that. The committee is led by our school safety specialist, that's Tim Murphy, who we work with through Capital Region BOCES. Our facilities director, Cliff Nooney, is on that committee. Our SRO and members of the Guilderland Police Department join that committee regularly. Our head of technology is on the committee. Our communications specialist is on the committee. We also have a parent rep, a Board of Education representative, a teacher representative, 3 principals, one at the high school, middle school, and elementary, and then the district office team is there as well. This group meets periodically. We were actually met yesterday morning, and the kinds of topics that we work on are the safety elements for our capital construction projects. Currently, we're looking at anonymous notification or a tip line for our school district. We've looked at threat assessments. We talk about safety training and drills. For a long period of time, we talked about our pandemic response. We work on our district level safety plan. So this committee really deals with all of the elements that we talk about around school safety. And one of them was our SRO program. And last year, the larger committee created a smaller committee, a subcommittee, to look more deeply into the possibility of expanding our SRO program. And many of the individuals who I just mentioned were part of that subset. There were about 8 or 10 people. I think Matt Pinchinot from our DEI work was on the committee. And I think one of our assistant principals also joined us as well, Brian Mazza. And I think Jackie Vandenberg, who's sitting in the back, she was on that committee as well. So we met a few times over the summer, and Chief Dan McNally joined us for our discussions as well. And at the conclusion of our conversations and our discussions, the subcommittee recommended the idea that we do exactly what we're doing right now, which is to bring the idea to the Board of Education, the idea of expanding our SRO program. So that's really, their work is before you right now. So one of the things that I thought would be helpful is to give a little bit of comparative data. We often compare ourselves on any number of measures with other school districts in the Suburban Council. So what I've prepared here is the results of a survey I did with my colleagues about a month ago. And I have not used district names because nobody likes it when we use our names, but I looked at the data here and organized us by enrollment. So you'll see in the far left column, total school district enrollment. The smallest school district in the group was 2,400 students, and the largest was 95. I also asked about number of buildings within the school district, and you can see the smallest is 5 and the largest is 17. And then over to the right, you see the number of SROs that various districts have, with the low being 0, and the high being the 2 largest districts at the bottom, who each have 3. Here we are, sort of toward the bottom third in terms of size here. We have 4,850 students, 7 buildings, and we have the 1 SRO. So there really isn't a lot of consistency across the numbers of districts who responded here, but we are not out of the ordinary. So I want to talk a little bit more about the goals of the program. The ultimate one is to ensure a place where people feel safe to learn and to work. We want to prevent and reduce potential harm related to incidents of school violence. We really want to focus on a positive school climate based on respect for all children, each and every child, and each and every adult in the school. And then we want to work on partnerships with behavioral and health and other care providers so we can support students and families beyond our school walls as well. So how do we go about fostering positive school climate and crime prevention? It's largely about relationship building. We talk a lot about how our SRO builds relationships with the students and the adults within our building in order to prevent problems. SROs also participate in a variety of activities to help build that open climate and culture of trust. Getting to know students, serving as a role model, and then being able to identify students who might need additional resources to be successful in school. And then there's a crime prevention element of this as well, and it includes a variety of things. Foot patrols, checking that our doors are locked, watching the cameras to make sure there are nothing worrisome going on in our halls, monitoring previous crime locations, helping investigate crimes, and assisting with analysis of the physical safety of our school buildings and facilities. So there's a law enforcement element of all of this. So SROs are responsible for the majority of law enforcement activities occurring at the school during school hours, but not, and this is really important, not general school discipline. The code of conduct is the work of the school administrators to manage. And there is the determination of whether an activity rises to the level of law enforcement is made in consultation with our school officials. Our SRO and our school officials talk all the time, and alternatives to arrest should be used whenever it's possible. There is a huge educational portion to all of this, and we strive and I think achieve having our SRO become a member of our educational team. Yes, they represent the law enforcement community, but they are part of the fabric of what we do here. So they engage in informal conversations, they engage in formal class presentations. So our students know our SRO, our faculty know our SRO, they're part of the learning process. And then working to be proactive in creating opportunities for learning to happen. We like to leverage the SRO as a resource. The way I like to think about it is an emphasis on the R less than the O, more on the resource side of the work of our SRO. So here are the basics to enforce criminal law and protect student, staff, and public at large against criminal activity, to foster mutually respectful relationships with students and staff, to provide information, to provide classroom instruction on a variety of topics, and to coordinate investigative procedures between the police and school officials when there are law enforcement issues. And a couple more, to handle initial police reports of crimes on campus, to take enforcement action on criminal matters when appropriate after consultation with our school officials, attend our special events, prepare lesson plans, and then collect data on the activities that happen. So there's a lot to it, for sure. So the PowerPoint, it's hard to capture what this really looks like and feels like in the halls of our school. So one of the recommendations of that subcommittee who met over the summer was, is there a way we can capture what having an SRO in our school looks like? And so that's what this does. Let me.
He's a big role model. He's a person to talk to. If I need to come to him, I can come to him or anything like that. If I don't, it's no problem.
He has had some of the best advice I've ever gotten, if not the best advice I've gotten.
You can tell that Sean really
genuinely cares about students and wanting to make the school and community a better place. He talks to kids, he gets a real pulse on the community, what's going on, trying to build those relationships with kids so that they feel like they have another person who's on their team.
There's such a big disconnect between law enforcement and people, and we're trying to change that. So it's gaining that trust of that student. It's just being that other trusted adult where they come to me with their problems, and I've seen that since I started.
He just warms my day up even when I'm having a bad day or just overthinking about something. I was having lunch one day, he just came up, felt so comfortable, felt safe. I mean, just knowing that he's there for us. I just love him.
The important thing is that they're seen as a resource. One of the things that Sean has done here with us, he's taught our 5th grade DARE program for several years.
Good morning, my friends.
When the school resource officer comes in and talks to our students and just answers questions, any that they have, one of the things he says is, I'm available at any time, stop in and see me. That position is invaluable to us at the high school, just to have an outlet for students, someone for them to talk to. We work really hard on making sure students have at least one adult member that they feel comfortable with, and for some students, that's Sean Ralston, that's the school resource officer.
There's definitely kids who feel more comfortable going to him than, any other teacher. Walk by his office and see if he's in there, and you can pop in and say hello. He brings me peace. He's like a friend. You can come to him with anything. I just really like having him here. He makes me feel safer.
We have such a big school district, and the school's big, and he can only be in one place at one time. So if we could definitely benefit from another.
I know we can't have a school resource officer in every single school, but if we had 1 or 2 more where we can kind of be in that area for those students.
The disappointing thing about the school resource officer is that he has to be shared with 7 buildings. We have a lot of needs. We have growing needs over the last few years. We need extra help.
A couple more slides and we'll open up to questions. So here's the proposed plan that's really up for discussion. So the Guilderland Police have offered to assign an officer to serve as an SRO at Farnsworth Middle School for the balance of the school year that we are in right now, so 22-23, without charge. But going forward, as part of our budget development process for 23-24, the district would then go ahead and plan to fund an additional SRO, again, working with the Guilderland Police Department. And the estimated cost for 23-24 is $56,000. So with that, happy to take questions. I will lean heavily on our friends in the audience to come to the mic if there are questions directly for GPD or for our principals. But let me open it to questions to the board.
I have questions, but you guys go ahead first. Okay, I think we can open it up to maybe the community first, and then I know other people have questions, so you can just come up to the mic.
So I have a question regarding the Safety and Security Committee. So obviously this committee, it sounds like it's really based on keeping students safe, like as a safety committee. So I was wondering, you mentioned all of these wonderful people that have been attending this these committee meetings, and these people that seem to really have an influence in our school district. But since it's regarding the safety mostly of our students and obviously teachers too, but I was wondering why we don't have a student representative on this committee, as it can provide the student's position and how they would feel and how they are feeling safe. And I was wondering if you would be opposed to having a student representative on this.
Absolutely not. I think school districts are given some guidance on who needs to be on their school district safety committee, but I don't think it would preclude that, and I think that's a terrific idea.
Other questions? I'll turn it to the board, and if other people have questions, just raise your hand and you can come up to the mic. Oh, you have a question?
So I just if all the adults speak on the topic, what about the students who go here? I just think if adults are speaking about safety within the students, they're just hearing about it from their kids. I think if more, I agree with what Rachel said, if more people could, I just think more students speaking about the topic would give you more of a reason to believe that we do deserve another SRO officer, because I think if just adults hear stories from their students, it's not really fair to us, because during the lockdown situation, I felt unsafe, but I just think adults don't, adults giving letters and recommendations isn't the same as students. So I just don't know why students don't speak about it more. I don't know.
Hello, my name is Melissa Schaefer. I have 3 children in the Guilderland School District. One in the high school who is a junior, one who will be entering high school next year as a freshman, and one who is in 5th grade right now at Linwood. I just find it to be absurd that on a daily basis my kid is coming home and saying, oh yeah, there were 2 more fights today, Mom. One with a weapon, one without. I watched a kid buy some weed right in the middle of class today. The sub was completely oblivious. Oh, someone else got milk today in school, Mom. It's just absurd to me. They showed me a video of one of their friends walking next to a principal in the hallway and just was smacked right across the face, full throttle. One man cannot keep 4,000 kids safe. It's absurd to me. We really need to know what's going on. He can't know what's going on in every building at all times. Unfortunately, there are a lot of kids that are taking advantage of that. And I feel that based on what my children have told me and their friends, they're scared. The teachers are scared. So, my daughter has worked very hard academically, athletically, to get her to a good place in life for college. We've had to hire tutors. She has extra work, because the teachers aren't allowed to teach to their full potential to the kids that are here to learn. And you have a huge percentage of kids that are here to learn, not to worry about getting milked in the cafeteria, watching their buddy get smacked in the hallway, watching a weed deal go down in math class. It's absurd to me. People move to Guilderland with the idea that this is a wonderful community and a great place to raise your children. And this year has just really opened my eyes to some things that are not so. So thank you for your time.
There's another hand over here, the question.
Hi, I'm Savannah. I'm a senior at Guilderland High School. I'm also a student representative on the DEI board, so I see some familiar faces. I just had a question regarding the SRO hiring. Will you guys be taking into account gender? Because I know our current SRO is a male, and I think it'd be really important to take into account whether you would be hiring a female or a male, because obviously it's really unfortunate to say that there's difference between female safety and male safety, and I was just wondering if you guys would be open to hiring a female officer, because I think a female officer would be really beneficial to the female identifying and also even non-binary identifying population, because there are differences. So, thank you.
No, that's great, Savannah. Thanks for being here tonight. I'll speak for myself when I say that what we hope for in an SRO is someone who can connect with our kids. Officer Ralston's been terrific doing that, and we would play part of the role in selecting the SRO. The other part would be largely done by the Guilderland Police Department. So maybe I'll put one of the police officers, Chief McNally, on the spot here to to offer some insight into the process by which SROs are selected. And
thank you for inviting us to talk tonight. This is great. So in our selection for any officer, we look for the best educated, the best fit for that position. We don't generally look at race, sex. We look at the very best officer, but I do take into consideration that question about having a female officer there. Just like when we try to do our selection for officers based on the demographics of our community, to try to be aware of that situation so that we get the right people. So again, I try not to select by race or sex the very best person. We're going to include the school with information on what we're selecting or who we're selecting and have them come in and be a part of our interviewing process. I'm not opposed to having a student on that committee as well to come in to help with that selection process. So I hope I answered your question.
Go ahead.
So my question is, if these students are telling you how unsafe they feel, and in my experience, if there's something that needs to be fixed, do you find the budget for it? If your child needs extra help academically, you find a budget for a tutor. If these kids are feeling scared to enter their classrooms or to just enter the school building where this is a place of learning and safety, why aren't we making sure that we can keep them safe?
So I think we have other questions we're going to ask regarding that, specifically about the process of hiring or what the district wants to do, but I don't know if you have a more specific question for the police in the back or for Dr. Wiles. I think we'll probably address your question as we talk about it.
Thank you.
There was another hand, okay, over here.
Just quickly, I think to Dr. Wiles about funding, because as we know, it always comes down to money, and I don't know, can't believe we're all here talking about finding money to keep our kids alive and safe and unharmed, but we are. We found money to put in a turf field somehow, but yet we're going to discuss to make sure we can find money to keep our kids safe. So I guess to Dr. Wiles, what research has the board done to all the federal funding out there right now, because there's millions and billions of it, to helping us to get this done?
Not a ton, to be totally honest with you, but I'm happy to look at what grant funds are available for us here in Guilderland. If that could be a possibility for us, that'd be terrific. So I think we're not really at the budget discussion place yet. We're just in the very beginning of the 23-24 budgeting process. We've got the thought exchange out there right now, collecting input from folks. But I think that's a great avenue, and if you have some particular places for us to start, please send me an email with, the agencies or the organizations that would fund us. That would be terrific.
Okay.
Thank you. So my question would be, personally, I'm in favor of additional SROs, but I respect that not everybody is in the same position or feels the same way. So my question would be for those who are not comfortable supporting an additional SRO. What I think we've established tonight is that there is a great deal of concern about the safety in the school. The kids are concerned, the parents are concerned. So for those people who are not in favor of additional SRO, and it would be very helpful for the public to understand what plans you do have in place, because the current situation is not working. And and one SRO is very essential, but is not going to solve the cultural issues or all the problems that we have. So it would be very helpful to also know, for the people that are opposed to an SRO or don't see that as the solution, what is the solution? It's something that definitely needs to be addressed, whether we go the SRO direction or not. So thank you.
And then I'll turn it over to ask you a question. What's that?
My first question is, am I able to ask the members of the board a question? How many of you on the board have children that are currently in an elementary school, middle school, or high school here at Guilderland? Okay. Folks in the audience, I'm sure we all do, that's why we're here. Please be honest in your response. At any point during the day that you know your children are at school, when they leave to take the bus to school or you're dropping them off, even if it's for a fraction of a second, do any of you who have children in the district, for 1 second, think, my children might be in harm's way? There's your answer.
Okay, I have a question. Oh, go ahead, Matt.
Just a quick question for the board. In anticipation for today's meeting, everybody knew it was going to be a heated discussion. Not really heated, but one way or the other. Has any of the board members reached out to anyone to do our own research in-house to see how effective our current SRO program is? Has anyone spoken to anyone, administrators, students, teachers?
So my question I was going to ask tonight, because this is the first time the safety committee has brought it to the board. So my question was to ask that, I know there's a couple
Right,
of people.
maybe officially to the board, but this has been a conversation that all board members are aware of
Oh, yeah.
for several months.
For sure, but we are not
So-
allowed to,
You can't talk to anybody?
We're not allowed to deliberate if it's not in public. So this was, maybe a couple conversations here and there, but we're not supposed to deliberate or talk about it if it's not in
Because
public.
a lot of people seem to do research on national studies and get data from the SRO studies, but like we really need to look in-house, like what works for us and what doesn't.
Let me ask this question. This is what's really bothering me, and I love this presentation, but what I didn't see in there was any of the counter studies about it, especially concerning students of color, non-white students. And a lot of the rise in the tension over the last month stems from racial tensions that students are telling us have been here for years. And my concern is, if it's been here for years, and we have an SRO program that's supposed to be dealing with this, why hasn't it been dealt with? That's where my concerns, that's my primary concern right now.
Yeah, so just my own personal response to that is that this has been an issue in society for years, and just recently it has spiked, as well as here in our school buildings. So.
But that doesn't answer my question.
You're right, it's a direct relation to what's happening in our society, so we have to address it here as well as society has to address it.
Well, I mean, racial
So-
tensions is not like that's not something that just arose in the last 6 months. You know what I mean? I mean, what the students are telling us, and that's all we get to go on. I don't have a student in the high school.
Right.
So let me just finish my question. What they're telling us is this racial tensions that now have erupted in the last 4 weeks because of the incident at the football game has been around for years. Why hasn't it been addressed or identified prior to the last 4 weeks?
I can't comment on that because I haven't been the SRO here. I've been here to support. I don't know what they've been working on the last school year.
And I wanted to, I can't remember who asked the question. I think it was you, Rachel, asked the question about what we would do, and that's kind of what I want to get to. Right. Is if we're in the 2012 budget question.
Right.
Money has to be tight. Why don't we do something where we can address it rather than get an SRO when the counter studies say the reason with the National Association of School Psychologists don't recommend SROs because it primarily affects the increased policing in school primarily affects students, non-white students. And we are dealing with a racial tension issue that we've been told has been here for years. And our response is to add another SRO when the studies say that's not a good choice. So that's where my conflict is. And I'm just letting everybody know that's where my conflict is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Am I allowed to comment also?
Question for me or for the
Go sit down. If we are expecting our SROs to fix a problem that's been in this district for a long time, then we're already in trouble.
I agree.
Because I don't believe that we're looking to add an SRO because of a racial issue going on right now, and I know you didn't specifically say that that's why, but we literally have students sitting here telling us they don't feel safe. We have students coming home, and I have a high schooler at the high school. They bring their friends home. We hear the stories. Like, I get the text messages during the day. My son texts the principal if there's a shelter in place because he needs it lifted because he gets worried. They're telling us they don't feel safe. I understand there's studies and things like that, but that's not going to affect like the racial issues going on. That's something in addition to an SRO that we need to handle. I think we need to keep that separate Because if we're expecting them to fix something, we're in trouble.
But you can't be separate when the studies are saying that another SRO or increased policing in schools negatively affects students of color.
So if we ask
So
the
what you're doing
students-
is saying, we got racial tensions, let's add an SRO. Now, an SRO is not going to stop violence in schools. We've seen plenty of that incidents in the world right now. It's unfortunate that we do. But the idea that an SRO is going to stop a school shooting or stopping high level of violence in schools is a myth.
Have we asked the students what they think? The students who are butt in seat every day, who are petrified to walk in?
I hear what they're saying.
I don't think you do.
Can you let me, I hear what you're saying. You not feel safe in schools. I hear that. I appreciate that. But what I'm saying is adding a single SRO, who's going to be at the middle school anyways, is not going to solve that issue. We got issues that we need to deal with at a council level, and we got to talk about it.
So
ask questions.
He doesn't speak for me.
I got a feeling, I knew this was coming, so let's go.
What you just said. I think a lot of what Dr. Wiles' presentation was saying is, and to Sean Ralston's video and the folks that were interviewed in the video, we know it might not stop violence. Hopefully it helps. But it's also growing a relationship with the students to the officers, or the resource, as Dr. Wiles would like to emphasize on, the resource. So I would much rather have a child feel comfortable going to, whether it's Sean Ralston or whomever we get, whether it's at the middle school or another one here, hopefully next year. We want our children to feel safe to go to these resource officers and say, I heard this might happen. This person scares me. That's at least setting an alert to them about what might come. So we want our children to feel safe talking to these people. My daughter is right over there in the red. She texted me yesterday, oh my blurp G, we just went in lockdown. As a parent, I probably went 10 shades of white and thought, oh dear God, here we go. And again, what I asked about 10 minutes ago, I bet a lot of these parents in this room have that same gut reaction when their child texts them, there's a shelter in place. There's a potential lockdown. Here we go. Okay? We need to let our students feel comfortable speaking to adults on the board, principals, counselors, coaches, custodial workers. I have an 8-year-old son who tells me he speaks to the custodial worker at his elementary school. He watches kids dump food on the floor, and he's comfortable saying to the custodial worker, can I help you pick that up? That's something I've instilled in my son. We want to instill our children to feel comfortable speaking to people in a higher level that they can hopefully nip what is going on around here. And I just want to say one more thing and then I'll stop. Dr. Wells had the slide up from 2012, one resource officer is what we went down to. We had one, then we had two, we're back down to one. That's 10 years ago. How much has our student population grown in 10 years? Okay? And then, I don't know if it was possibly you or Mr. Green asked about, have funds been explored? And you were very transparent and said, not very much. In 10 years, we still have one resource officer. We have to do better. I'm one of the letters that you initially read as a public comment. We have to do better. Thank you.
This is probably the beginning of a bigger discussion. We didn't set it up like a discussion so we can go back and forth. I have questions. I know other board members have questions, so I'll just start with one, and I'm sure other people can jump in with other questions. Because it's been mentioned about having an SRO here at the high school, and I know that the plan, from my understanding, is if there is another SRO to be added, it would be at the middle school. So I'm just asking if Mike or somebody else could speak to the issues that would be addressed, or that, I guess, like, what do you need, the needs that are not being met at the middle school that an SRO would be helping with? Just because we have not had this discussion in public yet, so I think everybody who has these questions would like, this out there.
Thank you, Dr. Rivera. I appreciate the opportunity to address the board on this question. Here's how I see it. A school resource officer is another resource for the middle school to support, empower our students to be safe, be respectful, and to make sure that their mental health and wellness is where it needs to be. It all boils down to relationships in this work, so it takes a special individual who is in the role of an SRO in order to do that, especially at the middle level, developmentally. So I'm excited to be at least invited to the table with the chief and as they recruit for future. This year, whoever's assigned to the middle school, I believe would be a familiar face, which we already have a relationship with. They already have relationships with kids. So I think it would be beneficial to help meet some of the needs that we have. Our behavioral challenges are a little bit different than the high school's challenges, developmentally different. However, we have seen an uptick in some of our disruptive behaviors. We have seen an uptick in some of our instances of physical fights, things like that happen at the middle level. Having an officer on site would help us facilitate solutions. I'm looking at it more from a lens of, right now the reality is my access to the one SRO is a reactive access. Something happens, I need assistance from GPD, I call our SRO. To be perfectly honest, this year, due to the activity that's been happening up here, a lot of times Sean will say, listen, can you reach out to Officer Stallmer or Officer Hanslick or because I'm dealing with something already up here. So evidenced by that, I would say an additional officer that we could deploy would be beneficial for some of the things that we're juggling as principals. Located at the middle school, I think there's a benefit to Westmere and Guilderland Elementary from a proximity standpoint. We would have a law officer housed at our building who could more quickly get to those campuses as opposed to Sean, who would have to travel from the high school. So I also think there's a value-added benefit for our elementary colleagues on that side of town.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Yeah?
Do other
Any
people
other
have questions for
questions
Mike?
while I'm up here? Awesome, thank you.
Thank you. So I have other questions, but I think other people on the board, so I'll give the opportunity to other board members too.
Well, I kind of wanted to circle back to Nate's question.
Sure, go ahead.
My name is Blanca Gonzalez Parker, for those of you who don't know me. I'm on the SRO subcommittee and on the District Safety and Security Committee. I am in favor of hiring an SRO, if not two. And the reason for that is that we have studied it not only as part of my degree for public health, but we studied that as a committee before we formed the subcommittee. I feel like it's an informed recommendation. With regard to your question/comment, Nate, this is not going to fix racial tensions. If you're asking why, if we've had an SRO for 2 decades, we still have racial tensions, I think that's an unfair question. What is going to fix racial relations? It's a part of a puzzle. It's a really important part of that puzzle. And frankly, we haven't grown or assisted the program that we began in 1999. If anything, we've taken away from it. We've given one SRO more work, and we haven't put any money into it. We haven't, it hasn't reached its full potential. And so this step, this having one full-time resource officer here at the high school, could potentially help. It could help, but you have to be open-minded enough and be fair with the expectations. Is the SRO hiring going to solve racial relations? No, it's not. But that's not fair to ask.
That's not what I said.
Oh, it so sounded like that.
It may sound like it, but what I was saying is we are dealing with racial tensions. Studies show that an increased police presence within school has a negative effect on students of color. So my concern is, we're dealing with racial tensions. That's what the studies tell us. Why would we take that step when we could take the money that we use and reduce class sizes at the middle school, thereby kids that are already on the fringe, who already feel disenfranchised, aren't pushed farther out because they're increased class sizes. Smaller class sizes, smaller cohorts. Take that money, get more people that can talk to our students and listen to them. It doesn't have to be an SRO to answer your question. They can talk. Your son talks to the custodian. Get some counselors in there. Get people who can talk to our students who they feel comfortable, that aren't disenfranchised by an SRO. Again,
We are at the appropriate ratios for social workers and school psychologists. Is it ridiculous what the ratio is? Yeah, absolutely, but we are way under SROs.
It's not a ratio thing for me. My concern is the police presence, as compared to using a counselor at some level, or getting people who can come in and deal with the
I think you just hit the nail on the head. That's the problem. An SRO is not just a police officer, Nate.
But
And
there
so
are
then maybe
police
you weren't
presence within the
listening,
school.
maybe you weren't listening to the presentation.
What I saw was an officer wearing a gun and a bulletproof vest.
If that's all you see it as, then you're not listening to the whole
What
presentation.
That's not what I'm saying.
And you're not
Blanca.
trusting the Safety and Security Committee.
My concern was that the Safety and Security Committee didn't look into negative or a counter.
That's not fair to say because you're not on the committee. You don't know that.
That's not what I'm saying, Blanca. What I'm saying is I didn't hear anything about it where you're addressing those concerns. Now, if you did that, that's fine. Tell me that. But that's not what I'm seeing in the presentation.
Our job is to tell you about our SRO here, and as far as we know, there haven't been racial issues reported with the students.
Blanca,
Okay?
I think I have a similar
And
question.
the SRO.
But I have a similar question, so because we are not privy to what the safety committee already reviewed, and I'm not opposed to an SRO, but I have a lot of questions, and I think I would be doing due diligence to ask the questions. I'm going to ask the questions. One of the questions I have is, have you looked at, when you say that your committee has done the research, done the research to support, I'm sure there's research that shows both sides, so I'm wondering, did the committee have a balanced conversation and think about what concerns there are?
Parent representative was pretty verbal about finding studies that indicate the opposite. And so what we decided to do is also to focus on what's happening here at the school and what has happened in the past. So yes, and honestly, I shouldn't be the only one answering these questions. Marie is there.
It would be beneficial to have whoever is on that safety committee either present to us, provide us with what they've done, because we have not seen anything except today. Besides, just little discussions here and there, and we're not supposed to, deliberate the topic until we're in public. So I don't know if that can be arranged, Dr. Wiles, whoever else is on the safety committee, but, clearly this is not going to be a one-time discussion.
You're looking for, Seema, something that says that that adding an SRO will definitely not make some students feel uncomfortable?
I want
That
research
will
to show what
definitely
you've
not?
done. I want transparency to what the
There
committee has
is
done.
transparency, and I
I've
don't
never-
like the
I've never
suggestion
heard-
that there isn't.
Yes. We are not in a state court, if students are willing to come forward. That is your best research. That is the truth right there. Students are your best research.
Since racial tensions,
Anonymous survey, or poll the students and say, who would like to give their opinion, and we know who you are. That is your best research.
Students don't really have a say in any of this. Like, you guys all speaking about this, none of us, like, except for those students who showed up here today, we did not know any of this was going on at all. Like, none of us have a say in this. And I think if you're asking students about their safety, they should be the first people you ask. I don't think that parents, you guys, I'm sorry, but, like, I don't think you know how, like, scared we are in school. Like, I really don't think you do. Because, like, the other day, when I was in my lockdown, I mentioned it previously, I was shaking. Because I did not know if it was a drill or not. Like, that is a safety problem that you guys, like, don't understand because you're not us. And I think if you, like, were to let us, like, explain, I have a perfect relationship with the SRO officer. I think you saw in the video, many of us do. I don't think it's just a resource. Like, it's not just, like, a person, it's just, it's like a person you can go to. It's not just, like, someone that's there that you're scared of, that you said we were scared of. I'm not scared of him. I don't think any of them are. I think we all spoke about being, like, grateful that he's here.
Dr. Wiles. If, that was actually the first question on my list, did anybody talk to student groups for their input or feedback about the SRO program in general, about, I know we've heard about safety, but was there any kind of thought exchange or survey, et cetera, given out to students?
Not a formal one, no. I mean, we have the thought exchange going on right now, and I think there's quite a bit of activity around the SRO.
You're also talking to us right now and hearing what we have to say.
Right, but we can't say that you're representing all of the student body. I think it's fair to give an opportunity for all students. That was the top of my list is, did anybody talk to student groups for their feedback or input? And there have been other times where we've asked if it's through student government to get the, whatever tool or instrument they're using to get out there. That way we actually give opportunities for the, middle and high school students to give us feedback, which I think, it sounds like it hasn't been done. I don't know if that's something that either you or the safety committee or in combination could do, but I think that would be really helpful to hear from the students in that sense too, beyond the ones that are here in person. But I think it's great that you came in person and are advocating.
So I don't think any formal process has happened, or one of Mike can tell me otherwise. We will get that thought exchange out tonight to the student body. It'll be open through next Wednesday, so you have plenty of time to weigh in. And the section is just for students, so we can hear exactly what's on their mind.
Okay, I have other questions. Other people have questions. Rebecca, go ahead.
I have several unrelated questions, like they're not related to each other. But one is, you really emphasize in your presentation that SROs are not involved in school discipline.
Mm-hmm.
And we've heard a lot about school safety, and I really appreciate the students coming out and being brave enough to speak. But I'm not really sure how, if SROs are not involved in school discipline, how that would impact what they're experiencing, like in the lunchroom, or what they've described to us tonight.
So I may turn to our SRO to answer this, but the role of the SRO is far more about building relationships with students to create a positive climate and culture. Monitoring behavior along the lines of our code of conduct is not the job of the police department. That's the job of our principals and our assistant principals. If there are incidents when the behavior crosses the line from this is just a code of conduct to something that is in the line of police work, that's where the SRO will assist. But I believe, I'm thinking in my 12 years here, I can't think of a time when an SRO arrested a student. Because we're trying to build a relationship, we're trying to help make a connection between how the police department is a helping force, a resource in our community, and not a body to be feared, but rather one that helps make us all feel safe. So it's kind of it's a bit of a dance. That's why there's a couple bullets in the presentation where they talk about conversations about criminal activity are done in consultation with the school district. So I don't know if someone from GPD wants to weigh in on that. Sean, if you do, because you live this every day.
So on an everyday basis, I had to yell at every single kid for not having a pass or discipline them for doing something wrong. I'm not going to be that trusted adult for them. They're not going to come to me and tell me that one of these students is going to get jumped tomorrow or this is happening at my house. I break that barrier with them that they don't trust me anymore because they look at me as administration. I'm not saying every kid doesn't trust the administration, but some of these students come to me and tell me things they won't tell you as parents, the social worker, the guidance counselor, or the principals. So they come to me and they talk to me. So if I'm out there policing the hallways, yelling at these kids for what I think are little things, right? Hey, you need to be here, you can't skip, you can't vape in the bathrooms, right? They handle that because I want to be a resource to them. I don't want them to look at me negatively, right? So it's about me building those relationships with those kids, talking to them so that they trust me, right? I can't discipline kids. That's not what I want to do. That's not my job. I walk around, I hang out with the kids, I talk to them. I leave that for the administration's team. They call me when they need me. Officer Ralston, you available? You available? All the time. So I leave that to them. That's their job. That's their profession. I'm there to do the other side of it, if that answers your question.
Nally can answer because this is just, I don't know. So if a police officer is hired by the police department and then they're placed in the school as an SRO, like what kind of training do they have for, I'm assuming, that I know there's an organization for SROs. That's just something I don't know about.
Yeah, so we go through a lot of training. It's never stopping. The school resource officer goes through a 40-hour course learning behavior issues. We learn how to work hand in hand with administrators at the school. We do investigations on child abuse, sex abuse, how to interview with crimes, how to build relationships with kids, how to work with special ed students. It's a huge array of training that we go through, and I still go through it all the time. I go to basic SRO, you have basic juvenile, you have advanced juvenile. There's so many courses that I've taken because things change, right? So I'm constantly trying to adapt and learn the trends in the school, right? What kids are doing, what they're not doing. It's a lot of training, and I don't know if my anybody else wants to speak on that.
I
but
can provide you actually with a curriculum of what an SRO training, what they have, the 40 hours, what that's comprised of, if you'd like, I can provide.
Yeah, that would be great, and also, just because I don't know this, I would want whoever's in this room or to have the training, et cetera. Does the, and I don't remember the details of the MOU, but who pays for the training, or is this, I'm just thinking, I know we're not at the budget stages yet, but I want to ask along the way.
Yeah, we'll provide all of the training and pay for
Oh, okay.
the officer. They're employed by us, we train.
Okay.
But yeah, there's a bunch of different levels of the SRO program.
Go to them.
I'm sorry. I'm very
Our
loud.
viewers.
I'm usually really loud, so. But yes, we'll take care of all that. There's no cost to the school district for that. And we do their recertification to keep them up to date on that.
Okay.
So.
I have a
Thank
question
you.
on the
Oh, go ahead.
funding. So if it is approved, I understand that you provide the funding for the beginning parts of it. During the interview process, are you selecting somebody that's already employed at at the Government Public or
Yes.
Police Department? Okay.
They have to be one of my officers, absolutely.
So there's X amount of people that may be interested. What if they have somebody from the outside that is interested in being a?
You have to be a certified police officer to be an SRO.
If they're from, I'm just, Dory, I have no, the first time I thought of this question. But say somebody from Troy, the police officer, they are qualified, like, so we get to pick from how many officers do you have?
41.
41, and however many people are, whoever chooses. So they're already part of the Gilderman Police Department, and part of their salary is paid for eventually by us, right?
Yeah.
You still pay for the rest of their salary, correct?
Yes.
Assuming
It's based on the school year, the number of days that they're at the school is the formula we're currently using. The reason I can't use an officer from Troy is they're not employed by me. We have jurisdictional issues with county, and I have no control over that officer as far as our rules and regulations or anything like
Yeah, I
that. So
understand that. Say they would want to, say they would transfer to. I don't understand how police work, how the.
And I'm
police
always
and the police
available for
officers,
any of
I'm
you to
just trying figure
discuss
this out.
anything to do with police. So
I think our
I'm always
one we have is fantastic. Thank you for everything that you do. So I'm just curious how we would go through the process of.
Yeah, I mean, that's my question.
You understand, like,
Process, because I don't know Sean personally, but I've heard just positive things. But as far as I know, we're not cloning Sean, so I would want to know, like, what, how much does the school district have in input in terms of, like, a parent, a student, et cetera? I know you said you'd be open to having a student there, would have in that hire of who is, the SRO, maybe asking those questions that, that are coming up straight, from school themselves. And I don't know if that's something for you to answer later, but I'm just curious about the process more.
It takes a very special person to be an SRO.
Sure.
And not all officers want to be involved with the schools. So that's part of that selection, is their interest, why they want to be there, how they want to help kids. It's pretty taxing, and especially when we're all parents, to be in that role. And again, you're a counselor, which is very different from what the rest of our job is. So that's part of that selection process. So education, training, attitude. We have officers, I think you've met all of ours many times over, Officer Stallmer, Matt Hanslick, Eric Batchelder. You've come to realize who you get. They're the officers that want to be there, that want to help, that really are invested in our kids in the program. So that all plays in there in those interviews. Just like when I select somebody for Crossgates Mall for the retail theft officer down there, that's a very special officer that wants to work in that environment. So I can't give you specifics, but
No, that's fine. That's totally, thank you for addressing that.
There are actually 3 general criteria in the MOU that I pulled up that in order to be an SRO, you have to meet 3 general criteria. College or degree coursework, because you're in an educational atmosphere. You'll be instructing at the elementary, middle, high school classes. Experience as a police officer and commitment to student well-being. You need to have minimum 2 years experience as a patrol officer, extensive experience with juvenile assignments, experience working with youth, and an interest in student success, juvenile justice, child and adolescent development and psychology. Creating a positive school environment are essential, and successful performance. So candidates should be free of significant disciplinary action. Way to go, Sean. And then training requirements, 40 hours, that's just to a minimum, plus it says that they have to keep up every year with additional training.
Actually, Kim, about that,
Yes.
I think it says it's recommended but not required for the additional training.
Does
Does it say recommended or required?
No, shall complete a minimum of 40 hours. Hold on. Okay, yeah, recommended, although Sean already said that he does it.
Which is great for him, but I think we should potentially change that to required annual professional development.
And we do require that from our department.
Okay.
They
Yeah.
must be a certified.
Because this was just the MOU from the town, you guys and us, so, yeah.
Chief, do the SROs get any DEI training, and if not, would you be open to that kind of training for anybody that we hired as well as Sean?
Sean, do you have that training? Okay. I'm always open to training. Obviously, the more training we have, the better we all do, so.
And what I'd like to let the whole board know is that we have had these many discussions, and you're right, you're not privy to all the discussions we've had, but when I asked Chief if we could be more involved with the hiring process, he has been nothing but open to it the entire time. So he's open to having board members be there, and I see this as a partnership. So that's why I wanted to ask you publicly if you, since we have these concerns regarding race relations, if you would be open to DEI training for
Absolutely.
Sean and if we hire another SRO.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And then if I could go backwards with a point that you made, part of our Criminal Justice Reform Committee that we had for the police department, based on the governor's recommendation, part of that was the SRO program. And if it was valid, if it was worthwhile to pursue, we did heavily look into that from a committee standpoint, and that committee found highly in favor of continuing the SRO program. That's based on our community. When we look at studies from other areas, we have to be careful where those studies are coming from. And they're not specific to Guilderland, they may be Newark, New Jersey that you're looking at. So again, we have to be very careful with those studies, and I think we always need to apply those studies to what we're doing here, and is it working in Guilderland? Is the outcome that we're getting what we expect? So I'm always available. I think we've chatted before on the SRO program. I know when we did the MOU, students were a part of that MOU that we came up with. They had their input in, along with DAs and police officers and administrators. There was a lot of parties and stakeholders that looked at that MOU. And I know students were a part of that. So I don't know if we want to call that formal or not, but that has been looked at by our student body. But again, I'm always interested in what people have that are the users of our services and what that outcome is. So I'll take any other questions, or I can sit down, so whatever.
I have more for you.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. So to Nathan's point, and also Every Town for School Safety actually doesn't recommend school resource officers because of the concern for marginalized students and students with disabilities. What do you say to that? What is your response to that?
Do you know me at all?
No.
Some of the board do. I'm about as transparent and open as you can get. My door is always open. I'm always asking the board, I did yesterday, what are the concerns of the students? Please come to me with those racial issues or whatever they are so we can meet and figure out how to address them. It's all about communication and understanding one another before we can get ahead of that curve. So if we don't hear about it, or nobody's really coming forward, or I can't get it in writing, which I always ask for, how can we address it? So we're always eager to look into whatever those concerns are. And I bet if you reached out to your students, I'd like to see who those students are, not for my own personal knowledge, but to address how we can help them to bridge that gap between police, the school, students, the community that we all try to do right now. I don't know if I answered your question, but that's...
I think you did, thank you. You know, Schenectady recently debated the school resource officer issue and had many hours of public comment. And a lot of it was more mixed than the public comment that comes out tonight. I don't know if you had a chance to look at any of it.
I have, and I've talked to many teachers in the Schenectady School District, and hear what's going on in their schools over the last couple of years, too. This is not unique to Guilderland. I'm always aware of what goes on in the bigger world, country, but I try to bring it back to Guilderland because that's what we're really focusing on. One of the things that I'm hearing tonight, though, is an SRO is never going to stop a shooting in a school. Does that make sense? Because the size of the buildings are not going to be there, but what we're bringing to the school is a trained police officer who understands how to respond to an incident, who's highly trained in dealing with if it happens to be a weapon, but they also have the ability to reach out to the outside, to the police department, to get additional resources and help when they need that. The school shooting that we saw was a total collapse of the whole system, where we had a bunch of kids that were killed while the police were waiting outside and never did what they were supposed to do. And that is something that's being held as a standard right now against police, and anybody in our field knows that we failed miserably that day. So that SRO is in the school. They have the contact with the kids. They're getting the information prior to the event sometimes. That's how we stop incidents from happening, is before they happen. Once they're going on, it's really too late. We're going to now respond and try to minimize the damage. So those relationships are huge. And without speaking to specific cases tonight, I can tell you in our town, they've been effective over the years. And I know one of those incidents stopped a mass shooting in our school, and that was about 2 decades ago.
That's the other thing. We are not, as the board, privy to all of the threats that have been investigated. We're not. I'm not even, okay? But there are threats that are investigated that don't make it to our ears. And how do we measure those? How do we measure or keep track of the ones that were thwarted, that were stopped by the investigations?
And what we have with the board is something I believe that's really special. We have a dialogue that goes on almost daily. There's not too many weekends that we don't have conversations with the staff from our side, talking about how to better handle a situation or what happens if this goes on. We have that dialogue. This school has done an outstanding job at one point of entry, locks, doors, training our staff to respond to a situation, active shooter training. All of those things together are all tools that we've had and use that make our schools safer. An SRO is just another tool. It's just having another part to that puzzle that we've worked so hard on all these years to make our schools safer. Most of us can go back to when you could walk into a school. There was no locked doors. You could walk into your kid's classroom. I'm going back 20, 25 years ago. That's all changed. There's one point of entry. Doors are locked. Safety procedures are followed. We have lockdown, shelter in place, lockout procedures that we follow. So we've come so far in this world that we live in. And again, we're just asking for a little more help with the SRO. Sean's done over 700 different incidents last year. That's a pretty amazing number. That's 1 or 2 a day of things that he's handling. It might be just escorting a student down a hallway, or it could be actually dealing with somebody with a weapon or whatever. So he's utilized a lot. Another one would help us continue that program. And again, in the middle school, that's a key part to start this. So if we go with our policies, our manuals, we follow the rules, we do what we're trained to do, I think we're going to be all right.
And if there's an issue, it sounds like you're open to discussing it. Like if we hire an SRO and then there are racial concerns or students are uncomfortable, are we left in the lurch, or is it something we can come to you and discuss?
Absolutely come to us. We do routinely. That's kind of a normal thing that we have with, and again, I'd like to reassure the students that as adults, we were kids once too, but we're trying our very best to make the schools safe. I have children in those schools as well, and I worry about the same concerns that I'm hearing up here. So we're doing the very best that we can. I think we can do a little better, but we have a very interesting world right now as well. So. I like hard questions. Don't give me.
So Schenectady refers to their school resource officers as community engagement officers. Is there any difference there, or is it just a verbiage difference?
It is. There's no difference.
Okay.
And they're bringing that back now, as you saw. They just added a lot of additional ones back to the school that they had lost through funding, et cetera.
Okay, but there's no difference.
No difference.
And then my second question is, I know some school districts, their school resource officers aren't in uniform. I don't know if your thoughts are on that.
So there's many different trains of thought on that. And to go to the SRO point about having an officer in a school, that is a deterrent in itself. When we look at hardening targets to make sure they stay safe, having a police officer or somebody trained in any building is a positive. As far as the uniform goes, I think it should be in a uniform. If we put them in regular clothes, nobody really sees what that is. I think there's a reason we have that officer in that school. As you know, with Sean, his uniform is much softer than mine. But still, it's a police uniform to give that comfort and that visual clue that that is a police officer in this school. And that's why we mark units in the fire lanes and stuff, so that you see that. It's a deterrent. It's a clue that you see that police car. So it can go either way. That's a discussion that we have with the board often, is what that uniform should be. And right now, we currently believe it should be a uniform.
This is maybe more for Sean, but for our students, when there's a mental health crisis and it requires a medical transport in schools, often officers are respond and kind of manage that situation, and that I don't know, unless people have been in that scenario with students, realize the role that police officers play when a student needs a medical transport due to a mental health concern. And I was wondering if you're able to support, if that's part of your role, if you're able to do that. If a student has to be transported due to a mental health crisis, safety to themselves or to others, are you, as a familiar face, are you one of the people that respond in that scenario before transport with students?
I respond to everything at the school, whether it's something small to a mental health crisis or a medical emergency, right? I have connection, I use my radio to connect with my dispatch to get everybody there that needs the help, right? We as a school do have social workers that can help with the mental health part of it, right? And they can do an assessment if that person needs to be transferred to somewhere to seek more help, right?
When it comes to the officer, it's able to be you, the familiar face for the student at that time of crisis. to
Yes,
help
I'm
them
able
attend?
to kind of talk to them, and they say, okay, I'll talk to you, or I don't want anybody else in this room, I want Officer Sean. So I'll sit there, and if it takes 20 minutes, 50 minutes, an hour, I'm there talking to them, and then they go back. But
Great.
that answers your question.
Thank you.
To respond to your question, Katie, actually, last week, we had a student medical emergency at the middle school, and Officer Hanslick heard the 911 call, came over, and from my perspective, he was another resource for us to manage the situation, to help close the hallways, to help safely escort the family out of the building. He was able to then, make sure that the family was set as they were going in the ambulance down to Albany Med. So in terms of his role in that situation, from my lens, he was an additional person that I could lean on to say, hey, you stand here, we'll stand here, we'll block and get everybody out safely and without having any embarrassment for the student. So that's how it plays out in real world.
So does anybody else up here have any more questions? So it's almost 9, and we're at the start of our agenda. There's a whole rest of the board meeting agenda to get through. So I think that it would be probably, do you guys have quick comments or questions? Yes. Kind of quick? Okay.
So first, I'd like to say how ironic it is that we're discussing studies after completely disregarding studies. Last time I was here in May, but that's besides the point because we chose what was best for this district. So this is a simple yes or no question. Have these marginalized students that we keep discussing in these studies come to this board, because it's an open discussion, and raise issues with our current SRO program, yes or no? Head nods. I've been watching all the board meetings, I'm going, have they come to the principals? No. Have they come to you? Right now, I obviously don't know personally, but from what we've seen in other parts of our district, I don't see how that's relevant right now to our district and our situation.
Okay, last question, and then we'll move on.
I actually have some answers to some of your questions, Mr. Saburin. First, I do think having another resource officer at the middle school will benefit the high school because our resource officer will be spread not as wide at the middle school. We'll have one there, so he will be more help here. 2, I understand that this could be a potentially scary situation for minorities, but my question is, what about the minorities who are becoming victims of some violent attacks at this school? That's also a problem, and they don't feel safe. I think that's something we also need to recognize.
Okay, so I think, Last one, Savannah.
As like the minority student here, I'd like to speak on behalf of those who are sort of apprehensive about the new SRO, and I think I'd like to circle back to Mr. Soberin's point. There's like the whole image of a police officer could be really intimidating to a student who has either is currently living or has previously lived in an area where they've had to sort of, for lack of a better word, hide or like try to avoid the police. And I think that's a question of like when they're walking to school and they see Officer Ralston and like what he's wearing, because like I think it looks a lot like what police wear in their everyday like in like on their everyday duties. And I just think that like that could be a concern for individuals who are living in those situations, and also minority students. Personally, I don't feel uncomfortable having a resource for safety. I think it's honestly better for all of us, but I think we should take into consideration like those opinions that parents and students can have. And also, I think someone mentioned the Everytown statistic, and I don't think we should disregard that, because Everytown is like one of the most moderate gun control organizations, and they are really dedicated to helping the gun violence crisis. And if they have stated that SROs are not effective and are not in order for the gun violence issue, I think that we should probably take into consideration that. Thank you.
Thank you, Savannah. So I think this is a start of a bigger discussion. I know that this is the first time it's been at a board agenda. So I will leave this first open to the district to reach out to the students to get some feedback directly, to hear from middle school and high school students. I know we've done this before for different topics, to hear about the SRO program and then safety in general. But before we move on to the next topic, I just want to kind of disentangle the issue of what happened with the lockdown drill and the SRO piece, because they're somewhat related, but they're not fully related. And so I just want to make a point that I know a lot of us have received emails from parents, from teachers, and have heard from students. And I don't think this discussion is really over. I know I myself I'm just disappointed with how it was handled. And I know that we've all piled on and told the administration this in the past 24 hours. And so I don't think it's a topic that's, that we're just going to move on from. I'm hoping that there's a path forward that we can learn from it. But I just wanted to acknowledge that first, because so many of us have so many people have reached out to all of us about it. And then also because it is related to this, but not fully related to the SRO conversation. But I think the SRO conversation is going to continue a bit. Blanca?
What were you hoping for from us? Were you hoping that we would vote tonight, that we would vote later? Is there going to be a
program
vote?
report.
There was no expectation for any voting tonight. I think this was, the opportunity to bring the topic to the board and the community, and to have this conversation and to have questions raised and, additional information to be gathered. So I think that's where we are at this point.
And Chief, does the generous offer that you have expire? Because I believe you made this offer originally in August.
It does not expire. I feel that strongly about the program. Didn't fund that.
Thanks.
Until we can get the board to can start it today. And I offered 3 months ago to start the program. So.
I would feel more comfortable if we had some kind of timeline at least, because we are still seeing an increase in fighting. Our administrators have told us that they could use some help, and so I feel like we're leaving this a little sort of abstract. We're going to think about it and ask questions and get more information, but there doesn't seem to be a definitive timeline of any kind, and that concerns me. We have an offer on the table. We have students who are concerned. We have community members who have come out. We have administrators telling us that they could use an SRO at the middle school, and we're kind of not even letting them know when we might have a decision or an actual discussion about it.
I can jump in. I'm looking at the list I've made of things that we can work on that should not take a lot of time. One, we can get the curriculum from Chief McNally. That will be an easy one to help us understand what's the scope of the work and what our SROs learn. I heard loud and clear that we want to hear from our students. We can do that, I think, in short order to get their input. And I also heard that we can, this might be a longer term thing, but start doing some research into what grants are available so that it becomes a moot point in the budget piece if in fact we are eligible for some grant funding. So I think those three things can come back to the board at the December 6th meeting. And then I guess I would ask if there are other outstanding questions or need for information that it gets sent to me so we can coordinate that as quickly as possible.
I mean, one question that I would like to, I know that you can't just answer it, but you could add to this, is that I feel like it was nearly impossible to find $8,000 this year to get those extra coaches, and that's under $10,000. So now we're looking at $56,000 for next year. So I just don't want this to be where we're not talking about this until the very end of the budget season. So just where do you think that money could come from? I know you're talking about this year being from the police department, but really that's just the rest of this year. We're talking about the budget for next year.
Yeah, that's 100% correct. And the difference between this conversation and the one in the coaches is that we were finding money in a budget that was already done. And in this case, we would have the topic about the $56,000 in that list of priorities that we would consider for funding going forward for next year. So it would be, you know, what are our priorities, which is the discussion we always have when we're doing the budget.
Quick question, is the $56,000 the total salary or what Gilderland, you guys would pay versus the police department?
It's our cost.
Okay, so then the police department's the other.
I don't know what the balance is, I just know what our part is.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying, I think that needs to be explained because we're sitting here saying, is the total 56 that's split or a third?
No, that would be the amount the district would be billed from the GPD.
Okay, so I'm going to move on to the consent items, but I'll give everyone a minute in case they want to leave before this part. It's 9 o'clock. We actually, last meeting, we were under an hour, so this balances.
It's important, though.
All right, so moving on to the consent items. This includes the minutes of the October 25th meeting, the November 15th personnel action, and the financials, A through D. Can I have a motion to approve the consent items? Nate, second Rebecca. Any questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Passes 9-0. Next, information items, curriculum and instruction. I'll turn it over to Rachel.
Good evening. I have a few individuals to recognize this evening. First, I'd like to recognize Kimberly Kern, who received the James E. Weaver Recognition Award this past weekend at the New York State TESOL Conference in White Plains. And here's some words from her nomination. Kimberly Kern is a student in the Clarkson University's Master of Arts in Teaching ESOL program, Capital Region campus. She has over a decade of experience working with K-12 students as a teaching assistant in the Guilderland Central School District, many of whom are ELs or multiple language learners, and has taken steps to become a certified ESOL teacher in our graduate program. Kimberly is in her second of 4 semesters of the MAT ESOL program with a 4.0 GPA for the 15 credits of 15 credits of TESOL coursework that she has already taken. She will complete her year-long student teaching residency in the Guilderland Central School District and will finish her MAT ESOL program in June 2023. So congratulations to Kimberly. Also, I have two English teachers to recognize from the high school. Each year, the New York State English Council, or NYSEC, recognizes excellence in teaching by presenting awards at their annual conference. This year, Robin Zisa, a GHS English teacher, has been selected as a recipient of NYSEC's Educator of Excellence Award. I would also like to recognize Chris Mazura, another GHS English teacher who is serving this year as the NYSEC president. So congratulations to both Robin and Chris.
Thank you, Rachel.
Next, I'll turn it over to Dr. Wiles, Superintendent Information.
Okay, thank you so much. My first item is just a brief update on our Superintendent's Conference Day, which was held on November 1st. We held our third conference day of the 22-23 school year. At the elementary level, half the day was utilized for parent-teacher conferences. Teachers and staff participated in a variety of trainings offered, including Stop the Bleed, that was for our nurses, Promethean board training, de-escalation training, praise training, that's the Citizens Response to Active Shooter exercise. And then we had some elementary science training as well. Matt Pinchinot presented training for understanding, and there were DEI discussions held at the high school level in the aftermath of the incident that's been referred to many times. The middle school offered professional development options in 3 strands: DEI, mental health and wellness, and technology. And then we also hosted Natalie McGee from Progression Partners to share information about our equity audit, including the equity learning walks that began the day after our conference day and continued through Monday, November 7th. She spoke with our staff at 3 different times, twice at the high school with groups, and then another session at Linwood Elementary. So all of our employees got a brief overview of the work that we're doing with DEI. And then we yesterday had our Expanded Leadership Council meeting, and we had an opportunity to debrief the day, to look at the evaluations that came in from our staff on the various programs that we offered, to take their feedback into consideration as we're planning our March Conference Day. And our March Conference Day is going to be much more building and department based rather than big programs district-wide. So overall, we think it was a very good day. We learned some things from the feedback that we'll take into our planning in the future. It was good. Keep going?
Oh, yes.
All right, next. Today is School-Related Professional Day. I guess we'll say it was School-Related Professionals Day. So we just want to join with everyone and acknowledge the school-related professionals who make such a tremendous contribution to our district and our students in our community. They work side by side with us each and every day and are often the unsung heroes of what happens in our walls and in our school buses and our cafeterias. So these are our custodians and maintenance staff, food service, aides, monitors, nurses, teaching assistants, clerical staff, and bus drivers. We could not do what we do without them, so appreciate their efforts. So I hope they will accept our sincere appreciation and heartfelt thanks. And I heard there were many treats around the district for our staff. And last but not least, we did launch a thought exchange yesterday, and I'm guessing it did not go out to students yet, but I will rectify that if it hasn't already done that, because we had some student responses in it. So anyway, they found the link somehow. So we're gathering input on the budget for 22-23. We want to hear from parents and community members, our faculty and staff, and also students. The exchange is set up so that you see thoughts and rate the other thoughts from that group. So parents and community members will evaluate theirs, faculty and staff will evaluate theirs, and students will evaluate theirs. It's a very helpful analysis tool. And it's going to be open for several days till 5 o'clock on the day before Thanksgiving, November 23rd. So I encourage everyone to go in multiple times, look at new thoughts, and rate them and add new ones that come to mind. And that's it.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Wiles. Next, we have board president information. We have a set of policies A through G. Nate or anybody else on that committee have any comments they want to make for us to look at specifically?
No, I mean, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Most of the musical instrument one is recommendations from the musical department, and admission of non-resident students, some recommendations from the admin level, and the rest of them are pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I would say that if, when everybody's looking over the policies before they come back for action, to look at letter C, the admission of non-resident students, because I think that's probably the one that has the most significant change, or at least potential, so.
I had questions on B. Do I just like send an email or?
On
For that
Yeah.
policy?
Yeah.
Yeah,
just
you can
for-
send it to, you could send it to Nate or any of us on the policy committee, and we can
Okay.
talk about it.
Great.
Unless you have it.
Okay, yeah, my question is, if we're gonna.
Oh, it's not a bad question. I'm just, because I was reading through it and, what is it? It says, on the second page, one of the school-wide approaches the district may use to remediate a student's performance prior to referral for special education is a response to intervention and RTI process. Our district doesn't really have a solid RTI process, so.
Which one are you looking at?
I'm looking at B, implementation of
B,
school-wide
page 2.
approaches
Oh,
and
okay,
pre-referral.
I'm sorry. I thought somebody said the thing about
Yeah.
admissions. I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. So I didn't know if it was like a policy issue or if it was only because it's in, but I know, like, we haven't had the response to intervention information on our website since 2015, and we don't have a way that they actually track the information. So,
That's a problem.
yeah, so that's why I'm just kind of. Good catch,
Isn't that a?
'Cause that's- So that.
Is that
requirement?
something that Lisa Knowles could
Yeah.
give us feedback on?
I
Because,
will take a look into that.
okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Next, we'll move on to action items. First is school business. Neil?
Arm Enforcement Program opt-in agreement, which is made between the Albany County, Gilliland Central School District, and Bus Patrol America LLC. And just to give you a little background on this, this is a program that, shared services that Albany County created that allows all school districts within the county to access this program. And they're basically using this company, a technology company called Bus Patrol, which has a artificial intelligence powered stop arm cameras that they would add on our buses at no cost. So they do that at no cost to the school district at all. And that camera will capture anybody that illegally passes the stop school bus. So when they have the stop arm out, the red sign out, if a car goes by there, the camera will record that. It'll put together an evidence package that will be reviewed by members of Bus Patrol to make sure it meets all the criteria. That gets sent to law enforcement, and then law enforcement will actually ticket the driver. And the driver can actually go online and see the footage of what was captured. So the idea here is really to enhance safety, make it safer for children, and also to curb motorists from passing stop school buses with their red lights on. So hopefully it will do that, and if you get a citation once, the next time, if you have another citation, the fee goes up and it continues. So it's a really great program. I think it's something that the school district is going to benefit from, and the community is going to benefit from, and our students are going to benefit from.
And if I can just say, they also don't, we don't get any of the money, we don't pay any, we don't get any back, but it takes care, it works on the problem.
Correct. It's no cost for the school district. They install the cameras, they maintain the cameras. We don't get any of the fees
Right.
either.
But we don't have
But there's
to
a
do
greater
any of the-
community, yeah, there's a greater community benefit.
I think it's terrific, I really do.
Motion first. Nate, second. Rebecca, now we can have other comments and questions. I just wanted to say I think it's awesome. Thanks to the county. We don't have to pay for it. And I think this is what people have been talking about and hoping for a while. Rebecca, did you have something?
Yeah, I think it's great. We're just wondering if we could we get a report on how many tickets we've issued, or, what the data is.
We haven't discussed that, I'm sure we can, but yeah, that would be great to be able to see how often it happens in our community. And it's probably more along Western Avenue, which our bus stops on the right-hand side of the road, cars passing on the far opposite side may not realize, but it does happen, unfortunately, within our school district.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Passes 9-0.
Next is a resolution for an installment purchase agreement to replace copiers within the school district.
Can I have a motion to approve the installment purchase agreement? Katie, second. Blanca, any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Passes 9-0.
Next is a resolution to approve an intermunicipal agreement with South Colony Central School District. And this is for South Colony School District to provide a half-day Regents Diploma-based alternative education program for some of our students.
Can I have a motion to approve the agreement with South Colony School District? Rebecca, second. Kim, any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 9-0.
Next is a resolution to approve the application for refund of real property taxes for the 2022-2023 school year as recommended by the Albany County Director of Real Property Tax Services.
Can I have a motion to approve the application for refund of real property taxes? Kelly, second. Nate, any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Passes 9-0.
And then finally, this evening, we have a resolution to declare surplus obsolete items and put those up for sale.
Can I have a motion to approve the declaration of surplus obsolete property? Rebecca, second. Gloria, any questions or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Passes 9-0. Great, thank you, Neil. Next, we'll move on to superintendent action. Dr. Wiles?
Thank you. I have several, 6 to be accurate. Co-curricular club approvals, 2 at the high school, the Empowering Club with Mr. Bowl, and the Aviation Club with Mr. Foro. And at the middle school, there are 4 proposed clubs. The Courtyard Club with Mr. Winchester and Miss Mullins, the Rubik's Cube Club with Miss Polino, Beautiful Me Club with Miss Heigl, and Dancing with the Students with Miss Stedge.
I don't see the dancing one on here.
Oh, dancing. Page 22. I'm looking right at it. So Dancing with Students is to encourage students to be able to dance in public and to give them the opportunity to have fun, work as a team, and dance in school. They'll meet every Tuesday with Ms. Stedge.
Okay, great. So can I have a motion to approve these clubs? Rebecca, second. Katie, any questions or comments? It's pretty cool to see all the clubs being formed by the students. All in favor? Yes, exactly.
Aye.
All in favor? Passes 9-0. Thank you, Dr. Wiles. Next, we'll move on to board committee reports. We'll start with communications.
Okay, we met on November 9th. I'll make it a little quick because Dr. Wiles covered the first thing, which was the thought exchange. We had to change the dates on that. We did talk about at the end to remind the people that if you didn't put something in the thought exchange, you could still come to the board meetings. At the end, the public comment time at the beginning or at the end of board meetings, you're welcome to come and share your ideas for the budget, for next year's budget, anytime. Also, we began to look at what we're calling a voter turnout analysis, and we began by looking at Westmere, the Westmere catchment area, because we just noted when we were looking at the results of the budget vote, how few people, that seemed to be a low turnout. So Neil and Linda got together and did our first analysis, and they took the Westmere data and they came back to the committee to share what they had found. I'm not going to take tonight, it's late enough, I don't need to go through all the data that we discovered, but it's fascinating to look at. We were so fascinated with it and talked so much about it, we decided that it would be good to do for the other catchment areas as well and see what we could learn by looking at that. The goal of all this is to find out if there are ways that we can help people become voters, find out why people aren't voting, and maybe get them more information. Maybe it's a language problem, whatever it might be. That our goal is to increase our voter participation in the town. So, for the school budget and any school vote. We also talked about how we might involve, especially our seniors, more with the schools, to connect them more with the schools, so they see some of the value that we do provide for our community. We came up with some ideas just to get us started. This is going to be an ongoing discussion. But we talked about offering seniors complimentary tickets to the dress rehearsals at the middle school or high school plays, outreach to recent graduates, inviting community to new facilities like the turf field or eventually the new pavilions, inviting the seniors in to maybe have some activities there, inviting community members to existing facilities like the Butterfly Station, which does an awesome job kind of bridging the connection between the community, but also maybe bringing some seniors in who might not know about it. Consider events like Grandparents' Day or Alumni Game on the new field, things like that. So we'll be talking about that again. Our next meeting will be December 12th, and those two items will still be on our agenda, the voter turnout and the community engagement on the budget.
Okay, thank you, Gloria. Oh, were you going to say something, Blanca?
Yeah, Gloria, one of the ideas, remember, that we discussed was maybe inviting some seniors to the dress rehearsal for the musical. And since Miss... Right, well, so since Mr. Maycock is here, I was just wondering, and you can just wave from over there, for the dress rehearsal, is that when the mask students attend? And is the auditorium typically full, or is there space that day, extra seating?
That dress rehearsal is a school day dress rehearsal.
Mm-hmm.
And the other dress rehearsals are not open, so that, we have to talk about that. But we used to have, we haven't for a couple of years because things have been weird, but we used to have a discount for senior citizens on opening night. And I don't remember what that price was, but we did that for that. The senior citizens.
Okay. Thank you.
Next policy, Nate?
Yeah, we had the meeting 2 days after communication, so that's all I remember. We went over the policies that we just reviewed, and obviously, as Seema said, the one that has probably the greatest amount of changes would be the admissions. So if, as Seema said, if anybody wants to really look at them, that would be the one to look at, and we'll obviously follow up with the RTI question that Kim had. We don't have I don't think we scheduled our next meeting yet.
I don't think so, not yet.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I can give an update on the audit committee. We met, I don't remember when, but it was 8 a.m. and yes, it was in person. So the main agenda item for the audit committee was to look at special areas, to do a special areas internal audit, and so we had a discussion about doing an audit of school lunch, because looking back at the history, it hadn't been done in 10 years, and so I think the discussion around that the federal government's not providing lunch anymore, and that we have a new school lunch director might also give her some valuable information, that it would be a good idea, since it's been such a long time, to work on the school lunch program audit, and then depending upon how long that takes, we basically gave Alexa, who was working with us about to do these special area audits, we mentioned concussion management as another one. And if I remember correctly, and I don't know if you remember, Neil, it hasn't been done here yet, at least not from the years that we looked at. Right. Right. So we thought that if there was extra time after the school lunch audit was done, that could be an area of interest. And if we don't get to it, we wanted to just make sure it was, thanks to Neil, it's in the minutes, so next year when we look at a special area audit, maybe that's something that we could look at. And there's a lot to concussion management audits that would be a lot more than I had known, so it was very interesting. And I don't think we have a meeting scheduled yet, but we probably will soon, right? Okay. Probably. Thank you, Neil. Next, we'll go to, who am I forgetting? Business practices, thank you.
You weren't missing anything by forgetting.
Okay, great, thanks. And then we have DEI.
Yeah, no, we meet tomorrow. Yeah.
There's a meeting tomorrow, I think it's 7 p.m., right? And there's another committee, isn't there?
I don't think so.
It's okay, that's all, sorry. All right, let me go back to the agenda. I'll go back to public comment number 2. Linda, are there any other public comments? Oh, okay. Should I check my email? Okay. Well, this is going through the airwaves to get sent to me. Just, I guess, a reminder for everybody to do the board self-evaluation when it's done. Okay, oh, that was fast. Here we go. Public comment number 2. This person writes, I'm a member of the Board of Education's DEI committee and have a student in Gilderland High School. It sounds like we are agreed that having another SRO will not resolve the rise in behavioral issues and disruptive incidents that have reportedly been on the increase at Gilderland High School and also at Farnsworth Middle School. I'm wondering if it would be possible to hold a town hall style in-person meeting for students, teachers, administrators, staff, parents, and community to talk about what has been happening and to seek possible solutions. If this is done through a thought exchange survey instead of a more interactive meeting, the question should be broader than just asking students whether they agree with having more SROs. It should include a question about whether students have observed a rise in violent incidents and if they have any ideas about how they would like to see them addressed. I think the SROs should be asked to undergo DEI training. It would be great if they also wanted to attend some of the DEI committee meetings as an ongoing part of their training and as a way of showing willingness to learn about these issues. This is from Elizabeth Floyd Mayer. Thank you, Linda. Are there other public comments? Okay, no. I think that's a good suggestion that she makes. Other questions, comments, board issues, ideas, and sharing?
No.
Okay. So can I have a motion to adjourn? Rebecca, second. Nate, all in favor?
Aye.
Passes 9-0. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.